Hey there folks, Wrel here. Today we're going to be looking at the TORQ-9, which is an assault rifle for the Terran Republic, available to the combat medic class. We'll be breaking down the statistics, comparing it to available alternatives, and then offering some advice on how to use it effectively so you can hopefully come to a decision whether or not this weapon will fit your particular playstyle. The TORQ-9 is a low damage, high rate of fire weapon with surprising accuracy and decent hipfire capabilities. It doesn't have the damage per magazine that other weapons in its class can offer, but it's a great tool for taking on enemies one at a time. The TORQ-9 will run you 1000 certs or 700 station cash to unlock, and it deals 125 damage up to 10 meters and drops off to 112 damage at 55 meters. It does have access to soft point ammo, which will bump the max damage range to 15 meters, as well as high velocity ammo, which can bump its minimum damage range to 65 meters. With that damage model, you're looking at 8 shots to kill up to 10 meters or 15 meters with soft point, and a 9-shot kill anywhere beyond that. The TORQ-9 fires at 857 rounds per minute or 14.28 rounds per second, and that's an extremely high rate of fire, but the TAR and the Cycler TRV also have very high rates of fire, and they follow a 143 damage model. So if you're looking at a purely theoretical time to kill, meaning that all shots are landing on the chest, bullet travel is instant, and your target isn't running nanoweave, you'd end up with this. The TORQ-9 has a 0.49 second time to kill inside of 10 meters or 15 with soft point, and a 0.56 second time to kill beyond that. The Cycler TRV fires at 845 rounds per minute and follows a 143 damage model, but drops off 2 damage tiers, so inside its max damage range, you have a 0.43 second time to kill and a 0.5 second time to kill up to about 42 meters. The TAR has a 0.45 second time to kill within its max damage range, and a 0.53 second time to kill up to that same 42 meters as the Cycler TRV. So what it comes down to is that both the Cycler TRV and the TAR slightly edge out the TORQ in close quarters time to kill, and as far as close quarters situations are concerned, the Cycler TRV and the TAR have better traits overall. But the TORQ also has benefits suited to much further distances, as the Cycler TRV and the TAR lose out a lot of accuracy over range. The TORQ-9 has 40 rounds per magazine with 200 in reserve, and with its low 125 damage model, you technically have enough damage output to kill 5 players without headshots. But given that the average player's accuracy is around 20%, it's much more common that you'll drop just 1 or 2 players tops, and then you have to reload. By comparison, your TAR and your Cycler TRV have enough damage and ammo to kill about 5.71-ish players per magazine, and the slightly lower rate of fire makes it at least a little bit easier to drop a target without overspray. And by overspray, I'm talking about bullets that you're wasting on players that are already dead when you hold down the trigger for a bit too long. Fortunately, the TORQ has the shortest reload times of any assault rifle in the Terran Republic, at 2.21 seconds short and 2.92 seconds long. This helps nullify the disadvantage of having lower damage per magazine, and it makes the weapon great at playing hide and seek. You dump your mag, you run from the return fire, you come back, you dump it again. You should be seeing that a whole lot in the footage here. It's a very effective strategy for weapons that have short reload times. The TORQ-9 has a projectile velocity of 620 meters per second by default, and equipping high velocity ammo will bump its projectile velocity up to 651 meters per second. Equipping soft point ammo will drop its projectile velocity to 589 meters per second. This is a 5% increase or decrease respectively, and all in all, it's not really that much of a shift. The TORQ-9's projectile velocity is still outstanding with anything other than a suppressor equipped, in which case it'll drop your projectile velocity by 40%, which brings you down to 372 meters per second, which is about the default projectile speed of most SMGs. If you tack on soft point ammo to that, then you're down to about 353 meters per second. I usually cover this in its own section, and I'll still do that later, but you should be equipping soft point ammo at basically any range that this weapon is effective. You should not be equipping high velocity ammo under any circumstances, and equipping a suppressor will depend on the range at which you're fighting. As far as accuracy goes, the TORQ-9 recoils up and to the right. Its first shot recoil is 0.725, but subsequent shots have a vertical recoil of 0.29. It has a relatively low horizontal recoil and recoil angle with only 1 degree of variance. Basically, at the end of the day, the weapon is very predictable and accurate from a recoil standpoint. From a numerical standpoint, the biggest challenge with this weapon is its extremely high first shot recoil, and the moderate to high vertical recoil after that. The easiest way to deal with this recoil pattern, especially if you're just learning the weapon, is to aim for the neck or the chest, you let the weapon kick into the head on the second shot, and then you pull down and slightly to the left after that point. You should find it pretty easy to control regardless though. On the other side of the equation, the standing aiming down sights cone of fire is 0.1, and when moving is 0.25. This is a little bit smaller than the T1 Cycler's aim down sights cone of fire, which is 0.3. While aiming down sights, the weapon is going to bloom at a rate of 0.05 per shot, and while moving and shooting from the hip, your cone of fire is 2.5 with a bloom of 0.1. What this means is that the weapon's cone of fire starts out pretty accurate while aiming down sights, and that its hipfire cone of fire is middle of the road for most assault rifles. However, the difference in accuracy between the standard T1 Cycler and the TORQ-9 is only one shot, and both weapons have the same bloom value. Remember though that the TORQ-1 ideally also takes you one more shot to drop your target, at least in the body, so the advantage that it has there is going to wear thin really quick. As far as attachments go, the TORQ-9 is a very versatile platform. It has scopes 1x through 6x including IR/NV, a compensator, suppressor, flash suppressor, a forward grip, laser sight, dark light flashlight, as well as soft point ammo and high velocity ammo. When it comes to scopes, I do prefer the 1x yellow dot reflex, but I'll equip the IR/NV when it gets dark outside. Higher range optics are more difficult to control thanks to the weapon's high vertical recoil, and given the rate of fire and bloom, you're most likely going to be shooting by feel anyway, so lower range optics are generally better. Outside of this, every setup is situational, but there is one main setup that I enjoy and I would recommend to others. That setup would be suppressor, laser sight, and soft point ammo. If I'm fighting at longer range, I'll just take off the suppressor, but the laser sight is going to lower my hipfire cone of fire by 33%, the suppressor is going to keep me off of the radar, which is useful within 40 meters, and soft point ammo is going to extend my maximum damage potential from 10 to 15 meters, or if I have a suppressor equipped, it'll extend the max damage range to 10 meters instead of dropping it down to 5. This is a high rate of fire weapon after all, and every high rate of fire weapon in this game has merits in close quarters. There are surprisingly few downsides to speccing this way, and I feel like you get the most bang for your buck as far as certs to attachments goes. The compensator is going to increase how far you'll create a radar signature on the minimap from 40 to 75 meters. It'll reduce your vertical recoil by 50%, which is the main draw, but it'll also increase your hipfire cone of fire by 20%. If you really have no interest in using a suppressor, then a compensator and a laser sight will still net you a positive benefit in both realms, hipfire and recoil reduction. Flash suppressors will increase your bloom from 0.05 to 0.06 per shot while aiming down sights, which is bad news for this weapon's damage profile. In my opinion, the standard suppressor is superior to the flash suppressor on this weapon every single time. High velocity ammo is a big no-no. This ammo type is going to increase your vertical recoil by 10%. It'll bump your minimum damage range from 55 to 65 meters, and it'll increase your projectile velocity by 5%, but the reason why you never want to take HVA on this weapon is that you only degrade one tier of damage anyway. So if your target is anywhere beyond 10 meters, it's going to take you one more shot to kill them start to finish, regardless of how far away they are after that point. Any extra damage or projectile velocity you'd be gaining just isn't worth the increased recoil, as the accuracy of this weapon is its saving grace. That said, let's get into some weapon-specific strategy. The primary technique for the TORQ-9 is to kill one target or two if they're close enough together, and then you find cover and you reload. Given the low damage profile and a 40-round magazine, you don't want to be caught moving from one target to the next sitting on 20 or 30 rounds, because if a heavy assault with full health and shields pops up, you're going to have a hard time. Given the accuracy and damage output, I feel that it's really useful to run the enhanced targeting implant with this weapon. You can pick off wounded targets from a distance, and you'll also get a better sense of how much damage you're actually putting on the target. Sometimes it'll feel like you're doing a whole lot thanks to all those hit markers, but if your target is running nanoweave, or if you're getting leg shots, or if they have an overshield, it can really skew that sense of damage potential quite a bit. It's best to aim down sights and go for headshots with this weapon, or at least you start with a headshot and then you finish with body shots. Given the smaller than average cone of fire and manageable recoil pattern, it's extremely capable of headshots before the bloom gets too big. After the first 6 rounds or so, you can choose to either go for another burst, or you hold down the trigger until the target is dead. That'll depend on the range, but I find that just mag dumping works best with this weapon. If you're positioning yourself with space to reload after each kill, this won't come at a huge cost to you. Depending on the situation, in close quarters, it's actually not a bad idea to jump over your enemies with the trigger held down. Your cone of fire is going to max out while you jump, but the weapon's high rate of fire gives you a better chance at landing damage and avoiding it as well. This is not a go-to strategy, obviously, but I found it surprisingly useful to supplement the weapon's lack of CQC tier hipfire. As far as engagement range goes, this weapon is a jack of all trades, similar to the T5 AMC. It works extremely well as a mid-range support weapon around the 40-meter mark, but you can also play with the weapon closer and further than that with a good amount of success both ways. I'd stay out of around 15 to 20 meters to avoid shotguns and dedicated CQC weaponry, but if you're quick on the trigger, you can deal with most targets there if you get the drop on them. Overall, I'd say that the TORQ-9 has a lower skill floor thanks to the high rate of fire, but it has a high skill ceiling thanks to the accuracy and lower damage per bullet. The difference between a low aim and high aim player here would primarily come down to the engagement range at which you can make the weapon work for you. If this video has been interesting, helpful, or entertaining, please feel free to like, subscribe, tell your friends about the channel, and if you've used the TORQ-9 already, I'd like to know what you think about the weapon so far, and if you have any questions or advice to share, you can drop those in the comment section down below. Thanks very much folks, Wrel signing off.